What are ODs interested in? And that really hasn't changed. He said staffing, staffing, and staffing.
We've been trying to fill a position or two on and off for a year or two, and the applicant pool is different. The just the capacity to manage things and multitask within the office. It does seem like it's a different workflow. So, we've had to adjust accordingly. We have done some, resourcing outside the office, and I'll give you a plug on that, Ankit. We've used my business care team and have a great virtual assistant who, helps us with a lot of different things administratively that don't need to happen in our practice.
It's a great way for us to manage our patient or our staff, because if someone calls out, then we still have someone to, say, answer the phone. And people aren't juggling having to see patients, that walk in and then answer the phones at the same time. So we think that's been amazing.
This is Optometrists Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week, we'll explore the journey of practice ownership and leadership in optometry. Join us for insights and strategies from the top minds in our field. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. As you were growing your practices, what did you run into that you didn't expect? What was it surprising? Man, this was not what I expected. It was harder than I expected. Something like that. What was the challenge?
Many years ago when I was a young OD, I had the pleasure of writing a few articles for Optometric Management magazine. And Jim Thomas, who was the chief editor back then, I said, Jim, what are ODs interested in? And that really hasn't changed. He said, staffing, staffing, and staffing. So, you go out, you recruit, you find the best staff, you onboard them, things are starting to hum, you got your people in place. And then the next thing you know, somebody says, hey, I found another job, or I'm moving out of state, or I'm getting married. And so they want to switch, and then you're starting all over again. And that, I think we saw a lot of that during COVID. I mean, during COVID, finding employees was at a premium, and you put an ad out in the paper, for example, or online, and people are ready to come in. You set the time and they don't even show up for an interview, or they show up, you're ready to get hired and they don't show up for the first day of work. It was just an incredible time. And there was, the competition, not only for staffing, but for doctors during that time was at a premium. And so I think staffing is always unexpected, and you really have to have some thick skin. And, it's a choice. It's a personal choice whether somebody wants to work with you. And you have to be able to respect that. And you have to be able to create an environment that people actually want to work with you as well. But that staff turnover is always the hardest thing for me.
I can't tell you how many times I know that lesson and I still have turnover and I still hurt by it every time. Like, oh man, I can't believe that. And I know it's going to happen. It's just natural order of things, right? But yeah, it's never easy. It seems like it always seems a little personal for me, at least.
It does feel very, very personal. And, again, when I was a younger OD, I had a situation where I wanted to leave. And my supervisor was an OD. He's somebody that I aspired to back in Chicago, Mark Jacob. And I wanted to move to California. And Mark was, Rupa, I'm sad to see you go, but at the same time, I'm really happy for you because I want you to chase what's out there and explore what else is out there. And so, that was a really good lesson to me, because it's for a guy who's got a lot of drive and who's competitive, that's really not intuitive to my thinking. It's something that, through mentorship, you have to be able to shape that thought. And I use that as an example for when doctors want to leave. My goal is when I hire folks, I try to develop them. So I have a quarterly development program. So maybe we start with situational leadership, we go into fierce conversations, but every quarter, we have it's almost like getting an executive MBA. We got a core group of doctors. We have, a focus. Typically there's a book or some leadership principles. We tie that back to what's actually happening in the practice, the behaviors that we want to change, and then tie that to a measurable result. And so they go through this probably for about 6 quarters. I think that's where I feel very, very comfortable that they really understand the philosophy that I'm trying to build, but we're actually building leaders. So when they just say, you know what, I feel like I've hit a ceiling with you, Roop. Like, what else is there for me? I'd like to get I'd like to get a piece of the action. I like to do a role that you're doing. Or by the way, there's a private practice that is down the street that I used to work at, and they're selling. And what the most satisfying thing for me now is to say, go ahead, spread your wings, fly away. But when they come back a year and a half later, and they said, Dr. Hansro, we doubled the optical the first year I got it. That has happened to me, I can tell you, more than a half a dozen times. And that to me makes me feel really, really great that like this is what it should be about. Like I picked the right person. This person is self-motivated, they're driven, and they're sustaining this concept or this philosophy. And so I couldn't be more happy for their success.
I love how your focus to scale is the people first versus, I think a lot of times we think like, am I offering the right things? Do I have the right equipment? Those are all baseline things you need. But your path for growth was all around people focus and system focus secondary with people first.
We went through COVID and we were really fortunate. Like, I feel like we had this great team, we really bonded through COVID. We didn't fire anybody or furlough anybody. Nobody missed a paycheck. And it just was a terrible time that we weathered that storm pretty well as a business. And then, as the Great Recession came and just, life happens, working as a tech and optometry practice is a bit of a dead end job. There's not a lot of room for growth and opportunity. So people, pass through and move on. So anyway, as the years have followed since COVID, I think we were a little bit of a delayed realization of these challenges that people had been facing a little bit sooner than us, but it's hit. We've been trying to fill a position or two on and off for a year or two, and the applicant pool is different. The capacity to manage things and multitask within the office, it does seem like it's a different workflow. So we had to adjust accordingly. We have done some resourcing outside the office, and I'll give you a plug on that, Ankit. We've used my business care team and have a great virtual assistant who helps us with a lot of different things administratively that don't need to happen in our practice. And that covers things from filing insurance and vision plan claims or applying EOBs, managing appointment requests online, a lot of patient communications through email or text. And we can just delegate whatever. I can send her a task through my EHR and say, hey, just can you do this for me? And she'll do whatever. And that's been a great thing. We're still building her skills. I do think, as I don't need to tell you, but for people that have been on that path with virtual assistants and are considering it, I think you have to realize like you have to put the work in. They don't come in knowing, how your practice operates, and they have a foundational knowledge a lot of times, and ours did. And she's great with the English language, even though it's not her first language. And that's all wonderful, but you have to pour into them a lot. And she's not in our office to see our culture daily. And so there's some work on that, but for the affordability as well as the way you can preserve the culture and the capacity of your on-site team, preserving their mental, health or whatever you want to call it as best you can, where they're, running themselves spread thin, outsourcing some things that way has been a great opportunity.
I brought my best staff member from my prior location to the office, and they just couldn't really put it together. I fired the manager within 2 weeks of starting. Staff members slowly trickled out for different reasons. Some personal, some I had to let go just because of the overall performance. And I think my last new staff member from that point sent me a message when I got home from the hospital having my second daughter, and I wasn't going to be there for a week, saying, hey, I took a job for $1 more at another practice. And I was like, okay, I think it's time for you to just go home. Don't bother coming back tomorrow. Enjoy your life. So at that point, I'm bringing in new staff constantly. That's been the hardest part, honestly, since opening, is staffing. Finding people that are self-motivated, that really enjoy eyewear and just helping people. We run off of a system, I say, more akin to a hotel versus a medical office. It's all about hospitality and taking care of people, thinking one step ahead of everybody, and always having the answer ready, what they need next, going before they get there. And that's really been, I think, the key to our success, is the ability to see what patients want, anticipate that, and stay in front of it. I've actually moved away from hiring experienced staff members. I keep one person on staff that knows everything, that's just absolutely fantastic at each office. And then the second staff member coming in has zero experience. We train everything. My best seller was a manager at a little retail spot called Salad and Go. I don't know if you had those by us, but it's a little tiny, it's like a shed in a parking lot that sells salad that they grew into a multi-million-dollar company. But he was great at multitasking, great personality. The last person I hired was a Starbucks manager. Prior to that, there's one that's a retail trainer at Express. She would take the new hires and teach them how to interact with people and how to sell. And all of them have been fantastic. But there's been, 8 duds in between.
Even the best companies in the world, I was hearing that they get it right only about 60% of the time. And so hiring is hard. So I like this. So it sounds like you're hiring for attitude.
Absolutely. Hire for attitude, and don't be afraid to fire quickly. Keep a probationary period. Be prepared that if they don't start hitting those metrics, and make sure you write out the metrics that are expected. If you expect them to have a 60% capture rate, make sure that's written down in a contract that they have to hit. And if they don't hit that rate, they're out the door.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, and maybe you can speak to this, how you've dealt with this. I see so often, and I felt it too. Man, they're not doing their job, but I really don't want to bring in someone new. I'm so busy. I'm going to be working more. Do I really want to do that? I'll just deal with it and let things slide.
Man, I run a small staff. So with 2 people in the office, if one person's not doing their job, the other person is killing themselves. So it becomes real easy and real self-explanatory that the person who's doing all the work needs to tell me, hey, so-and-so's not doing their job. If they don't take that initiative, I won't know. But once they take that initiative, I give them the exact option. I say, hey, let's start an improvement plan. Let's get them going. But if they don't make that improvement plan, would you be okay with me firing them? You will have to work a little bit harder for a time period, but the goal will be to bring in somebody who is a much better fit and helper to you to work synergistically to end all these problems.
I like that. That's interesting. So you don't have a manager over both locations, correct?
I had one manager that I had at one location, and she's one of the 2 staff members. And then like an assistant manager, somebody who really knows what they're doing at the second location, the highest paid, more bonuses, more money going their way to handle more tasks and more of the issues.
How else are you dealing with staffing challenges, or are you having staffing challenges?
It's a good question to ask right now because I'm in the middle of changing things. I won't have students for the next 6 months or so. It's just the way the lottery worked this year. And so I'm having to get an additional exam tech to fill kind of what the students have been doing for me. So, kind of the breakup with our 2 main offices, I've got 2 opticians, I have 2 front desks, I have a remote biller, and then I have 2 pre-testing technicians. And so we're setting up now, we're going to start working with Weave because we've never been doing texting or anything like that for patients before. Most of our patients are pretty old, not interested in that. But as the years go by, even our 80-year-olds are on their smartphones. So it's high time. If you're not doing texting, that stuff, probably good time to start doing it. But so we're moving somebody into a remote scheduling position because of that to manage a lot of what's going on with that side of things. I'm having to get an additional exam tech to keep us on this double booking that we're doing. And I'm in this process of hiring an associate doctor. So I've got 2 part-timers to help fill this other office. I'm at a point We're booked out 8 to 12 weeks that we're kind of ready to add a couple more days. So while I could probably have a traveling staff that goes along with me from place to place, um, I need staff that stays at their location so that I can get another doctor to fill those spots when I'm not there. And ultimately that will raise our revenue while keeping our expenses pretty close to the same.
The one thing I hear from patients time and time again is it's just every time I come here, I just really think you have the best staff. You're just the nicest people. I just really want you to know that. And I take that really to heart, say, thank you. I'm glad to hear that you like them as much as I do. But the strategy is really when you interview, I don't interview somebody for skills. I interview somebody for just, do they have the right personality? Do they have the right traits? Because you can train skills, right? But you can't necessarily train someone to have the soft skills, to have the emotional intelligence, to have the right way that they handle themselves with patients on a day-to-day basis. You can pick that up just from having a conversation about anything. And so we've actually brought in a number of individuals that really had no prior training, but they had just the right personality traits that we thought would blend well with our group so that everybody kind of gets along, if you will. I think that's important. But not only that, just how do they relate to patients? Do they have common sense? Do they have a way of broaching uncomfortable subjects in a way that is, again, emotionally intelligent and validates the individual without being defensive, without jumping to conclusions. So that is how I think we were able to build a good group of people, is we just shopped around for the right personality traits.
Yeah, I like that. So is there a specific like secret sauce that you look for? Like, how did you know that they weren't like the one?
It's a good question. I would just put it down to guts. It's just kind of a gut feeling. Not only from myself, but I also, have a couple other higher, level staff that I've trusted to kind of give me their insights as well. And right after an interview, we can kind of look at each other and say, yep, she's got, that's the person that we want. And we've definitely taken people with lesser experience, lesser skills for those that have those personality traits that we just kind of have a feeling for. We just know that they're going to fit well. And we're willing to take a chance on versus somebody. It's like, okay, they're more skilled. But I also have kind of found that individuals with less skill are more malleable to your way of doing things. If you're looking for individuals that have greater skill sets and sort of set in their ways, sometimes it's difficult for them to blend into your system, right? Say, well, I know you've done it that way for 20 years, Edith, but what we need to do here is just, if you can do it just a little bit differently, we'd appreciate that. And sometimes people just don't budge. They're like, no, I'm doing it my way or the highway. And it's like, well, okay, well then we have another decision we have to make.
Starting the second location, getting Brookville up and running, it's far enough removed that we had kind of forgot about all the difficulties early on. When, we started off in Brookville, we had 3 employees. So you had somebody call off sick, you lose 33% of your employees. So you're shorthanded. I can remember the days of working with my office manager. Do we need to reschedule patients? Trying to figure that out. Where now in Brookville, we have 15 team members, where if somebody's sick, it works better when we're all here, but we can easily kind of cover for each other and help out. So now that we're seeing that in Germantown, starting off at a smaller group, we were intentional with the people that we're bringing in now. They're all hired knowing that they may have to go between the 2 offices. So we have a handful of teammates they're cross-trained, that they can help out in the optical, they can help out as a tech. And they know if somebody gets called off in Brookville or in Germantown, they need to go down there and help out.
Can you touch on that a little bit? Because I think some people might be hearing this and saying, wow, 20 minutes, 20 miles away, I could never get my staff to go that far.
Yeah.
Like, what is it that you do differently culturally that people gravitate towards your office?
Yeah, and it was being really slow and very intentional on how we hire our team members. So we've gone through the hiring process, and now Indeed, you just get a huge influx of people applying. We'll get 400 or 500 people within a couple of weeks, and it's just being patient. We're being a small town. It's a unicorn to find someone who's already trained in the position you're hiring for. That's got a good culture fit that matches what we're about, what our mission is at the office. So we tend to go off of personality. We go for people who are hardworking, that work well with teams, and have a great personality. So for us, it's being patient. We've had times where we're a month in, and we're, me and my office manager will be joking. We're like, man, are we ever going to find somebody? Are we going to, do we need to start cutting the schedule? Do we need to start doing this or that? And it's just being patient and waiting for the right people to come in. So every time we found the right fit, people who are mission oriented with us, who want to, there to help patients, that they work well with teammates. And, we've even had times where, we've had them show up at the office in Brookville. Last minute, someone calls off. They'll go down to Germantown for the morning, come back to Brookville, and they just know how our patients always come first.
So I'm going to ask an interesting question here. Tell me about when you hired someone and there was a false positive. You thought they were a good cultural fit and they ended up not being. What happened? How'd you work through that?
Yeah, and we've had very few over the years, thinking back, of a teammate that didn't work out. It was because of performance. It was almost always, if something didn't work out, it was usually how they interacted with the team. And it's tough. I like to say I'm always really quick to make the needed adjustments. And sometimes we keep team members around maybe a little longer than we should, hoping, again, we're in a small town, so a lot of the teammates that we have, they're in our community. My kids might go to school with them, and it can be tough. But again, it ultimately comes down to the reason why we keep growing is because we want to keep making bigger impact.
My staff is incredible. I don't know. I am very lucky. I mean, I definitely feel like I compensate my team really, really well. One of the things that I changed 3 years ago is I changed everybody to a 4-day work week, because I found that if somebody worked over 36 hours in a week, that they called out the next week. And it was something that I tracked very consistently. I was like, why does this happen? I have a headache. I don't feel good. My stomach hurts. Oh, I have this for my pet. And I was like, you know what? I don't work Monday through Friday. Why should they work Monday through Friday? So I changed it so that they're Monday through Thursday or Tuesday through Friday. I have 2 employees that like to have a midday week off. So they do Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, and then work Thursday, Friday.
Gotcha. I like that. And it's not you're actually the first person I hear to say that's actually made a huge difference in terms of staff stability.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. Like I get to the end of the year, I'm like, you guys have PTO. You gotta use
They're like,
this.
we're good. We have 3-day weekends. What's the point? Yeah.
Like in the beginning, as I mentioned, it was like just having only 2 people with people calling out. Also, like the quality, when in the beginning, we weren't really sure. We didn't refine our hiring process really well. So we would just kind of hire without deeply looking at what, maybe interviewing more candidates kind of thing. So we've had our fair share of just people that were not a good fit. So in the beginning, it was like that, finding the right people. And then as the years went on, it's like, once we do find them, and now we found them, which is great. Now it's like putting them in the right seats, figuring out, should they all just be cross-trained, or should we now start having just like a dedicated optician where that's all you do, right? And a dedicated pre-tester. Now that we have more people on our team, because now we have like 5 people, not full-time, but maybe 3 to 4 full-time equivalents. So now we've managed to shift from everybody being cross-trained to now you have your focus. But some of the challenges is training, making sure that you like retain the information. Sometimes the biggest challenge is while you're seeing patients, like in between, they're waiting up at your door to ask you a question because they don't have that autonomy yet, or like kind of the thinking like, what would I, if I can't see Dr. Nguyen or Dr. Pack, what would I do? So we're trying to train them to be more independent and stuff like that, and empower them ultimately.
I like that a lot. Anything specific? Like, can you tell us something specific that might work well for you, that has worked, or maybe something you tried that didn't work?
Well, I do want to talk about actually my BCAT, because I think that's been a great success that we've found in our practice so far. So for listeners who maybe don't know exactly, my BCAT is actually your company that we work with. You guys train a virtual assistant, usually in a different country. Our virtual assistant is from the Philippines, and she's answering all of our phones all day long. the great part about it is that we didn't have to train her basically almost at all. We gave you our training playbook, and she learned some of the things that we usually do in our office and basically follows our protocol, which we love because I know every office does things a little bit differently. And it's a great way for us to manage our patient or our staff, because if someone calls out, then we still have someone to, say, answer the phone. And people aren't juggling having to see patients, that walk in and then answer the phones at the same time. So we think that's been amazing. We also do have a virtual scribe as well. So she also is from South America in Brazil. And, same thing, she just offers that extra person or body in the room that can help with managing flow, patient load. And we really think that it's been amazingly beneficial in our practice, especially when, one or even two people call out, we can still manage a full case day without feeling overloaded.
Now, back then it was one employee for every $150,000 that an office would do. Well, with inflation and everything, it's now closer to 200,000. So he's doing 450,000. He only has 3 employees. He's maxed out his staff. They can't do anything. Hey, doctor, you need to add another exam lane. You need to hire another staff member. And we're probably going to add another employee after 3 months. Because once you get that other chair going and you get that other exam room going, you're going to need another employee because you're going to have your optical backed up. So you need another optician in here. And after that happens, you're going to be able to do this, this, and this. Well, lo and behold, that office jumped from being under $500,000 that year to over $700,000 next year. I do think one of the biggest hurdles that people run into is when to hire a new employee. And I understand that as a business owner, when I hire a new employee in, I don't look at our team as just how many employees we actually have on my payroll. I count their significant others, their spouses, their children, and so on, because the decisions I make as a business owner doesn't just impact our team, it impacts their households. Okay. So I understand why people are nervous to hire more employees, because you never want to have to lay off people. And I've always been able to say, I'm very proud of the fact that over all the years of managing 18 offices, I never once had to lay people off. I always found a way during tight times to make the payroll work and make sure the business could grow. There's always a way. You have to think outside the box. If you're inside the box, you can't see the label. You've got to see from outside in to see where opportunities are.
So I never do job listings. I always recruit. And one way that it can be really great for you to recruit is, first of all, build a community, whether it's on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. Start to create a community with other optometrists, or if you're in any industry, with people in the industry, because you can then start to have a place to be like, hey, I'm hiring, and people know who you are and can spread the word. The second thing that I do is I never, ever list a job on ZipRecruiter or Indeed. I do the opposite. I will actually use something called Resume Finder on these platforms, and I will put in the keywords of exactly what I'm looking for. I will have AI scan all the resumes, give me like the top 20 clients, and then I offer them a job via text or an email. So those are easier ways to do it. Now, I shouldn't use the word easy. It takes a lot of work and effort. Right now, I'm actually working with someone who we are working to hire someone for his dry eye business, patient care coordinator, which I believe you should always have if you want to expand fully into aesthetics. And he's having a little bit of trouble, right? It's because it does take some diligence and some time, but you can actually find someone pretty quickly when you look this way versus let me just do a job post and hope that somebody good shows up eventually. That's, I think, the big mistake in hiring. Optometrists run a quote unquote small business, and they don't realize that big businesses typically recruit. That's very, very common. If you need a good optician, go offer great opticians in other places positions. You never know that maybe they're happy. Maybe they live far from the office. You don't know. So you've got to put the energy in. But I always find people, oh my gosh, if I need to hire someone, it never takes me more than 2 weeks because I usually use these modalities to find someone.
That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrists Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit buildingempires.live. This show is proudly sponsored by My Business Care Team. My business care team was born out of staffing challenges my wife and I faced together, managing multiple optometry locations. We refined our approach at Classic Vision Care and now offer our expertise to others. If you're experiencing challenges with staffing and you'd like to set up a discovery call, we'd be happy to help you and connect you with the right resources. We'll see you next time.